We never touched. But every time he entered the room, something shifted in the air like memory without a moment. It's strange how quickly silence becomes a roommate. How easily a person you once undressed with your eyes can become someone you remind to take out the trash. Daniel was still my husband in name, still sat beside me at dinner, still signed birthday cards with love. But the man who used to light up when I walked into a room, that man was long gone, replaced by a version of himself I didn't recognize. Tired, distracted, distant. At first, I fought it. I bought new lingerie he never noticed. Left love notes in his briefcase he never mentioned. Lit candles at dinner that burned down to nothing while he answered emails in the next room. Eventually, I stopped trying. You can't pour yourself into someone who's already full, with work, with stress, with everything but you. And then Noah moved in. He wasn't ours. Not really. My best friend's son. 22, tall and lean, with that quiet, intelligent presence that didn't ask for space, it simply claimed it. He had just graduated from some program out west, and his internship in Chicago had fallen through last minute. Just a few weeks, Ava had said over the phone, "Until he finds his footing." I said yes before she finished the sentence. He arrived on a rainy Thursday, a duffel bag in one hand, a worn leather sketchbook tucked under the other. His hoodie was damp, hair slightly curled from the rain. "Miss Thatcher," he said with a soft nod. "Please." "Olivia," I replied, smiling. "You're not a kid anymore." He smiled back, just a hint. "You look the same." I didn't, but the lie felt kind. I set him up in the guest room, fresh sheets, an extra towel, a quiet apology that it didn't have a desk yet. He said it was fine. He didn't need much, just some quiet, some time. At first, it was easy. He kept to himself, ate at different hours, always helped with the dishes without being asked, always thanked me when I cooked. It was refreshing, really having someone in the house who noticed. Daniel didn't notice. Daniel came home late, took calls through dinner, and kissed me on the cheek like a business partner. "Don't wait up," he said every night. So I didn't. The first time I caught Noah watching me, it wasn't predatory. It wasn't even flirtatious. He was leaning in the kitchen doorway, a mug in his hand, eyes half-lidded with thought. I was humming, stirring something on the stove. I turned and our eyes met. He didn't look away. "Something smells good," he said softly. "It's nothing special. Just roasted garlic and tomato." "Still," he said, "you make even nothing smell like something." I blinked, laughed awkwardly. "You're sweet." He shrugged. Just honest. That night, I stood a little longer in front of the mirror, brushed my hair out, moisturized. Not for him, I told myself. Not for anyone. But I lingered. And I noticed the curve of my collarbone, the way the fabric clung to my hips. The next morning, Noah made coffee before I came down. My mug was already on the counter, black with a splash of almond milk, just how I took it. "You remembered," I said, surprised. He looked up from his phone. Of course. Daniel had never remembered. Not once in 17 years. The moments were always small. Never enough to say anything aloud. But I began to feel them like echoes in a quiet room. The way his hand would brush mine when we passed each other in the hallway. The way his voice dropped a note softer when he said my name. The way he asked about my day and waited, really waited, for the answer. One evening, I was folding laundry on the couch. He sat at the kitchen table, sketching. The house was quiet. Rain again. Always rain. It seemed to be the only weather that matched the space between us. "Do you ever draw people?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Sometimes." "Anyone I'd know?" He paused. Then, with a half-smile maybe, my hand stilled on a dish towel. I didn't press. I didn't need to. The air between us was full of things unsaid. It always had been. That night, I lay in bed beside a man who hadn't touched me in weeks, maybe months. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the way Noah's eyes lingered on me, not with lust, but with attention. With curiosity. with care. And that, more than anything, made my chest ache. One morning, I came down in a robe. Not deliberately, not at first, but when I saw him at the sink, shirtless, hair damp, I didn't retreat. I poured my coffee. I didn't adjust the robe right away. I stood near him and said nothing. He didn't move. Just looked at me. Not at my chest. Not at my thighs. At my face. At my mouth. "You're different in the morning," he said. "How so?" "Softer," he said. "Like you're still halfway between dreaming and waking." I didn't speak. I didn't smile. But something inside me, something I thought was long dead, opened its eyes. The days began to stretch. Not in length, but in tension. Like elastic pulled just shy of snapping. Nothing happened. That was the thing. Nothing ever happened between us. And that's what made it worse. If something had, if I'd woken up in his bed or found his shirt in the laundry basket, maybe I could have labeled it, named it, blamed it, fixed it, buried it. But instead, it lived in the air. It waited. Every glance, every silence, every almost, hovering just on the edge of wrong. It started small, the way hunger always does. I began to wait for him. Not consciously, not in a way that admitted guilt. But I noticed the sound of his door opening. I timed my coffee breaks with his. I hovered in the kitchen a little longer after breakfast. Wore lipstick some mornings I didn't need to. He noticed. He always noticed. "New color," he said one morning, gesturing to my mouth with his chin. "Ma'am?" I sipped my coffee. "Your lipstick. It suits you." I smiled behind the mug. No one's commented on my lipstick in years. He leaned on the counter, eyes fixed on mine. Then they're blind. I should have said something. Should have reminded him I was married, that he was too young, too close. That I was too old to be playing games. But I didn't. Instead, I looked away, heart fluttering like something caged. Daniel didn't notice. Not the lipstick. Not the way I stopped sleeping with the bedroom door closed. Not the way I watched Noah across the table like he was a page in a book I wasn't supposed to be reading. One afternoon, Daniel was out of town again. Some real estate conference 3 hours away. He'd left a kiss on my forehead like he was clocking out of a shift. I spent the day cleaning a house that never stayed messy, just to quiet the thoughts. Noah came home from a run, sweat clinging to the collar of his shirt. I was in the living room, sorting books. He dropped to the floor without a word, began stretching right in front of me. I should have looked away, should have excused myself. Instead, I watched as he reached forward, back curved, muscles tense, breath slow. "You're staring," he said, not looking up. I jolted. "What?" His voice was calm, amused. "You're staring, Olivia." I flushed. I didn't mean to. He sat up, wiped his forehead with the hem of his shirt, exposing a line of muscle and skin. Then, eyes locked on mine. "It's okay. I understand." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My throat was too tight. That night, I opened a bottle of wine. Just one glass, I told myself. Just something to settle the nerves. I sipped it slowly, legs curled under me on the couch, the TV on but forgotten. The house was quiet. Until his door opened. He came in, saw the bottle. "Bad day?" "Just tired." He nodded, walked to the kitchen. I heard the clink of glass, then footsteps returning. He sat on the other end of the couch, wine in hand. We didn't speak for a long time. The silence was comfortable, dangerous. Then he asked, "Were you always like this?" I turned. "Like what?" He took a sip. "Lonely." I didn't answer. He leaned in slightly. "Because I don't remember you being this quiet. When I was a kid, you used to laugh. A lot. That was a long time ago. Does he make you laugh?" His voice was soft, but it landed like thunder. "Noah." He shook his head. "Sorry. That was out of line." I stood, suddenly too warm. I should go to bed. But as I passed him, he caught my wrist. Not hard. Not possessive. Just enough to stop me. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't pretend you don't feel it too." My heart stopped. My breath did. Everything inside me turned to ice, then fire. He let go before I could answer. But something had already shifted. For 3 days after, we barely spoke. He came and went like a ghost. And I let him. I buried myself in chores, in errands, in anything that felt ordinary. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. I dreamed about him. About words unspoken and touches never made. I woke up breathless, ashamed. The line between us hadn't blurred. It had crystallized. Clear. Sharp. Waiting to be crossed. And still, we didn't touch. But the touches were everywhere. He left notes sometimes. Not love notes. Not quite. Just fragments of thoughts scribbled on scraps. You looked sad this morning. Don't let him make you forget who you are. I notice when you leave the window open. I kept them in the drawer beside my bed, not because I cherished them, but because I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Then came the drawing. I found it by accident, tucked in the back of his sketchbook when I was moving it off the coffee table. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. It was me, sitting on the porch, hair pulled up, bare feet on the rail, a book in my lap. He'd captured every detail, down to the way my fingers curled slightly when I was lost in thought, down to the faint lines around my mouth I always tried to hide. It wasn't erotic. It wasn't romantic. It was intimate. And it broke me. That night, I left my door ajar. I don't know why. I don't know what I was hoping for. But I lay there, wide awake, the quiet of the house pressing in. He didn't come. I thought I heard a pause outside my door. Just a moment. Then footsteps fading. Nothing happened. And that somehow made it worse than everything I was afraid might. The point of no return and the aftermath of what was never supposed to be. It happened on a Thursday. Not with a kiss. Not a touch. Not a sound that didn't belong. It happened in silence. Daniel was due home from a 3-day conference. The kind he always came back from with a new tie and a tired smile, smelling like travel and generic hotel soap. The night before, I'd spent an hour scrubbing the house that didn't need cleaning. I vacuumed rooms we hadn't entered all week. I polished the kitchen faucet. I ironed pillowcases. It was obsessive. Pointless. Desperate. Maybe I thought if everything looked perfect, it might feel less hollow. Noah came home late. He walked through the front door just past 9, smelling like sawdust and rain. His hair was damp, hoodie clinging to his collarbones. He was carrying a bag of groceries, ingredients for bread. He liked to bake. Said it helped him think. He moved around the kitchen like he belonged there. Like he'd always been there. I stood in the doorway and watched him unpack flour, yeast, sea salt. Every movement was deliberate. Careful. When he noticed me, he didn't flinch. You should go upstairs, I said quietly. He paused. Why? Because Daniel's coming home tomorrow. His expression didn't change, but something inside him shifted. I saw it in the way he set the bag down. Slowly, like he didn't want it to make a sound. You're scared he'll see something that isn't there, he said. I swallowed. I'm scared he'll see something that is. We stood in silence. Then, softer, do you regret it? There's nothing to regret, I whispered. But the words burned. Because we both knew there was. Not in the way people would assume. There had been no sex. No sweaty bedsheets or tangled limbs or half-buttoned shirts. Just presence, attention. That's what I'd given him. What he'd given me. And that was enough to shift everything I thought was settled. He stared at me. Not pleading. Not angry. Just present. The way Daniel never was. The next morning, Noah was gone. No note. No sound. Just absence. Heavy. Palpable. His room was stripped. The bed made. The air thinner. I walked in slowly. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a letter, or a drawing, or some small confession tucked under the pillow. But there was nothing. Just the echo of everything we hadn't said. Daniel came home a few hours later. He kissed my cheek. Smelled like cologne I didn't recognize. Asked about the house, the kids, the dog we didn't have. I nodded, smiled, answered all his questions like a woman playing a role she no longer auditioned for. That night, he reached for me in bed. It was instinctive, perfunctory. A hand on my hip, a brush of his lips against my neck. But I froze. My body didn't know how to accept touch from a man who hadn't seen me in years. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice half asleep. "Just tired," I murmured. And maybe that was true. But the tiredness went deeper than my bones. The days blurred after that. Daniel didn't notice. He never asked why I started walking alone in the evenings, even in the rain. Why I let dinner burn twice in 1 week. Why I stopped humming when I folded laundry. But I noticed every minute, every quiet mile, every overcooked meal. I noticed how empty the house was without Noah's soft footsteps, without his mug left in the sink, without the sketchbook that used to sit quietly on the coffee table. Weeks passed. Then one morning, I found it, tucked in the back of a forgotten drawer in the guest room. A single page, folded in quarters, hidden inside the lining of the bedside table. It was a sketch. Me, in profile, standing at the kitchen window, arms submerged in the sink. Sunlight catching the line of my jaw. He had drawn every detail, the faint lines around my eyes, the curve of my lip, the tension in my shoulders I didn't know I carried. Beneath it, in small handwriting, "I always saw you even when no one else did." And I broke. Not because of him, but because of what that meant. Because I had been invisible. To Daniel. To myself. But Noah had seen me. He had noticed when I changed my hair. When I stopped wearing my wedding ring. When I hummed under my breath, and when I didn't. He'd remembered how I took my coffee. The sound of my laugh. The shape of my name when no one else was listening. He saw the woman I'd buried under laundry piles and half-finished dinners. He had been unexpected. Not because of how he looked, but because he noticed. And now he was gone. 3 months later, I ran into Ava at a bookstore. She looked older, tired, told me Noah had moved to Oregon. Started fresh. He didn't say goodbye to anyone, she said. Just left. I smiled politely. Lied and said I hadn't seen much of him either. That he'd been quiet here too. That he'd kept to himself. She nodded. "You know boys," she said. But I didn't. Not really. I only knew him, and I only knew what it meant to be known. Now at night, I sometimes open the drawer. The sketch is still there, folded, hidden beneath socks I never wear. I don't look at it often, just enough to remember that once someone saw me. Once someone saw me like I still mattered. Daniel sleeps soundly beside me, unaware, still distant. I've never told him. There's nothing to tell, I suppose. But that's the thing. It's not what happened that changed everything. It's what didn't. We never kissed. We never touched. We never said the words out loud. Sometimes when I see myself in the mirror and feel like a stranger, I think of him. And I wonder if maybe some betrayals aren't actions, they're silences that echo the loudest.